Hi, thank you so much to everyone for joining this masterclass with the MET Orchestra Musicians. I'm Claire Cunningham, CEO and founder of Lessonface, where we have been connecting students with music teachers for live music lessons and classes online since 2013. Welcome to the sixth masterclass in this series featuring cello. We are now accepting applications for performers for flute, horn, double bass, oboe, piccolo, and trombone, which are the classes happening through January. If you know advanced level students, please encourage them to apply. The flute applications close this evening at midnight. So we begin. Now, Jerry Grossman of the MET Orchestra will coach Sumin Kim, a student at Bergen County Academies, who will play the first movement of the Schumann Cello Concerto.
Hello.
Hi, can't see you yet.
Oh,
Oh, there
can
you
you see
are.
me now? Okay.
Yeah, I see you. Okay, hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. How much of this concerto are you prepared to play?
I'm planning on playing until like the recapitulation, like right when the theme
Okay,
comes back.
well, okay. So we're probably not going to get to all of that because, we have time limitations. So what I think I'd like to do is ask you to play the first section, the first page,
Mhm.
and we'll talk about that. And if
Okay.
we have any time left,
Uh-huh.
you'll get to play some more. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that
I
sounds
think that's
better.
that's the best way to go about this. So why don't you start? And yeah,
Okay.
and then after you play a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the piece, even separate from how you play it, because it's such an extraordinary work. Deep breath. Fantastic. I'm not going to have so much to say because you play so well. Why don't you play the next section for me, please?
Okay.
And then I'll have something to say for sure. I think everybody should give you a round of applause. Yeah, here we go. Wow, you know, you're really already very, very accomplished cellist. It's wonderful to hear you play. What year in school are you?
I'm a senior in high school.
In high school. Fantastic. Wow. So yeah, you get around the cello very well. You play in tune. You know what you're doing, basically. I'd like to say a few things that I think might bring this up to the next level. I mean, I don't have to tell you to play in tune or to use your bow better or any of that stuff today. But what I think this piece begs of anybody who plays it is an emotional involvement that is so deep and so, I guess I would say, even over the top. You know, Schumann, do you know much about his life?
A little bit.
A little
Not
bit.
all.
He was, you know, I don't know what his actual diagnosis would be today, but he was probably bipolar, manic, depressive. He spent the last 2 years of his life in an institution. Um, and did you know that he wrote this piece in 2 weeks? It took him 2 weeks to write this piece. So he was probably undergoing some kind of manic episode. You know, what do I know? I'm just guessing, but it seems logical to assume that given his mental health over his life. So it's hyper emotional. It's on fire with feeling. So when you start all these half steps and all of those have to be just so intense with the vibrato and with everything you've got. So you start pretty so intensely. So everything you've got, play from the start it again. See if you can add up, just bring it up a notch. It's good. Don't cheat the F of its time. You know, it's. Oh, so sadly. That's the first note that has that quality of oh my God, this is tough, right? You got a little A minor arpeggio, big deal. Nothing's happened yet. Although this little accent is kind of nice. Right? There's an accent on that A. It's a little bit of a sting, let's say. But then I find that F to be just powerfully emotional in this context, right? It's the first note that isn't just a simple A minor. Right, play again from the top. It's not exactly an accent that I'm asking for or missing, but I'm getting it from you now. It's that the whole note has that left hand going, right? It's all in the
Okay.
left hand.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'll
One
do
more
it
time.
again. A little better.
Yeah, it's better. Do you feel it?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think I need to work on like trying to express it more.
Yeah, well,
I
you got to work on that all your life, aren't you? You know, when I was at, I'll tell a quick story. I'll try to tell it fast. When I was at Curtis, I played this concerto with the Curtis Orchestra. It was my graduation moment. You know, it was a big deal. And the conductor was this older man named Max Rudolph, who was he was European. He was one of the refugee generation of musicians, and um, and rehearsal. And I played it, and I thought I was doing a wonderful job. And he stopped me and he said, "Mr. Grossman," and I didn't know what he was going to say. He said, "Have you ever suffered a lost love?" Right? And there's this old guy from the old country asking me if I'd ever, had a girl break up with me. And I was 21 or 20 years old at the time, and by then I had. So I knew the kind of pain he was talking about, as many of us do know. And it just brought me right into that emotional, oh my God, of course, that's what this is about. Something along these lines. I mean, who knows what specifically, we'll never know what Schumann was suffering at that moment that he was so frantically in 2 weeks writing a cello concerto. But that's the kind of emotion, the depth of emotion that we're digging for. Then the next thing he said made a big impression on me. He had a big ego, this guy, and he said, when you know all of the works of a composer, as I do of Schumann. In other words, he knew every single thing that Schumann had ever written. And I didn't doubt that for a minute, but it was the first time that I ever pondered the notion that it's possible to do that. And nowadays with YouTube and all the incredible technology available to us, it's even more possible to know everything that Schumann wrote, or everything that Ravel wrote. That's an easy one because that's finite, not not difficult amount of music to know. Everything that Bartok wrote, you can do it. And when you know everything that a composer wrote, you familiarize yourself with his language, with the way he notates things that are unique to him or her, I should say. And Schumann's family life. He was married to Clara. Do you know about Clara? Good. She was a
yeah.
great composer herself, right? And she wrote some beautiful lieder, which I happen to know well because my wife is a soprano and she recorded Clara Schumann lieder. Her name is Corliss Euchre. You should go and look for that recording. I digress. Clara was wonderful, and she figures prominently in Robert's music, right? Do you know the string quartets? Clara, Clara, and in this piece, Clara throughout. So there's a Clara in this, what you just played. Clara. So try not to break those up. Don't change bows on those,
Oh,
on that
okay.
motive, I think. Arrange your bowing such that that can be in one bow. Let's play from, you did one thing that I thought was kind of an arbitrary, unnecessary rubato. It was when you did. Why do you hold that A so long?
I felt like it was like how I felt it when I played it like that was like it was just like all so continuous and really intense, and then
Uh-huh.
at that moment it was like a slight like like a relief, and then he went back like intense. So I think I wanted to express that, but
Yeah, well, actually, that's not a bad idea. That to feel it, I think you feel it accurately, but I think that to execute it that way is um, only going to confuse your listener.
I see.
You know, it's kind of your responsibility to play in a way that is always intelligible, for starters, to your audience. Assume that your audience has never heard the piece. Everything you ever play, assume they've never heard it, and play in a way that presents it to them. Here it is. This is Schumann's cello concerto. This is Bach's Suite Number 1. So you're always sharing, expressing and sharing, those two together. Those are the two things that we do as musicians. We express, hopefully, the composer's wishes, but combined with our own experience of our own emotional life. I mean, who else's emotional life do we have to to express except our own? But we try to understand what we have in common with what the composer is, we think, expressing. And then when you figure that out, then it becomes about sharing that with your audience, right? So I'm digressing a lot in this in my allotted 20 minutes, but I should want to impart some information as quickly as I can. And this, so be careful not to do anything that will distract a listener who might be following along this beautiful line. Right? That's a little rubato is fine. I approve. I encourage. Rubato is one of the most underused expressive devices. I mean, we need rubato. You know, otherwise it's all very square. So in this piece, obviously, there's a lot of room for rubato. The accompaniment is very kind of whoa, whoa, whoa. It can be, you can fudge it a little bit, you know, and it'll still be, you can still do your thing. But you do want it to be intelligible. You want the rhythm to be clear, or clear enough, so that the listener doesn't go away scratching their head and saying, well, Harold, what did he just do? You know, what was that? You know, you want them to be secure. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying. So play for me again this, play that passage again.
Right now, I'll stick to my bowings because I think it'll mess me up. But then I'll try to do that Clara like.
Yeah, no, don't change any bowings now. I would never ask anyone to change bowings and fingerings in front of an audience. Now, you know that what precedes that is a big orchestral tutti, right? Dugga 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 dum. You have to match the orchestra sound in decibels as best you can with our pathetic little piece of wood here. We have to do our best. So it's a very dramatic entrance. Yugga dugga 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 dum. You have to yah. And then here's a place for, as you do, some rubato. Not too much, but a little, yeah. But you always have to have the goal of the end of the phrase in mind. So you're starting with this dramatic entrance, and then I exaggerate, but it goes to there all the way. So make sure that the line is connected after this tremendous "Here I am" in the bottom of your register. It's a great moment. It's not business as usual. And by the way, how many cello concertos are there up to this point, right? What do we know? Boccherini and Haydn, and Beethoven triple, some other stuff, I'm sure. But so this is like Schumann showing the world that the cello has this expressive capability. Wow, what is that? The violin can't do that.
Yeah.
So let us have it. I mean, of course, you have to be careful to not overdo it. Don't break a string or anything like that. But, big. I think you get the point. As you work on this, I suggest you use fewer bows. Don't break it up too much. So, well, maybe you do need to change there. Yeah, fewer bows. Otherwise, it's too chopped up. And ultimately, wouldn't it be nice if we could just play that all in one bow? But we can't.
Yeah.
So you have to change bows, but a little less. Now comes the. So the first one goes, and then you have. It's a surprise when it goes on after the. All right. So beautiful, this music really is. I think we have to stop because we are on a schedule. Am I right?
Yes, that was wonderful.
All right, let's have a
Thank you so much, Suman.
Willing subject. It's really beautiful playing. I look forward to hearing you again and again over the years as time marches on and COVID comes to a close, I hope.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to mute myself now. Shut up.
And now Joel Noyes of the MET Orchestra will coach Maya Sauter, a student at Peabody Preparatory, who will play the first movement of the Elgar Cello Concerto.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Maya.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So we'll hear Elgar. Is it the first movement?
Yes.
Okay. I would say it's rather brief, so maybe we can just have you play the whole thing.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. Bravo. Wonderful playing. It's lovely to hear you, and let's see. So I'm glad you played the whole thing from start to finish. I was wanting to kind of get a sense of the big picture, and this movement it's interesting in the context of normal concerto literature. I mean, it's so different from what we just heard in the Schumann. It's so very different from something like Dvorak or Haydn. It opens basically with the cello on its own, recitative. And after the introductory section, it kind of just, it's this unending melody, that just this thread of melody that just keeps like a spool of yarn. It just keeps unwinding itself. So I wanted to hear you kind of play from beginning to end to get a sense of your feeling about the architecture of it and the sort of the framework of it. And I enjoyed it very much, the pacing and the basic sentiment and aesthetic that you brought to it. I very much enjoyed. So I would say just maybe a few specific things we could focus on. I would say within the very sort of this movement's very sparsely written, I guess you would say. There's a transparency in the writing, and a simplicity in the melodic material, and as I said, sort of a sparseness in the orchestration as well. So it's really the responsibility of the cellist to bring the listener along from start to finish in this movement in particular. So let's go back to the top, and why don't you play a little bit just from the top, and I'll just interrupt you as you go along. Yeah, good. So the first thing I would say is, although this movement, as I said, I described it as, you know, transparent and sparse, there's also a lot of very specific instruction. Lucky for us, Elgar didn't leave too much mystery in terms of what he wanted to ask us to pay attention to. So you can see, you know, the first bar, nobilmente fortissimo. I think these sforzandos in the second bar are very important, right? I think you could bring those out quite a bit more, so that the thematic material that he's going to lay out for the rest of the movement is actually embedded in these first few bars. And these rhythmic sforzandos also bring out the harmonic points of tension that will come along through the whole movement as it proceeds. So that introduction of dissonance is so important, and I think you could do a little bit more with those sforzandos. You want to try something? Try from the beginning. Try to do something with that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it just needs to register that harmonic progression needs to be really well understood by the listener. So I enjoyed how that was much clearer, and I think the use of the sforzandos is sort of punctuation for that. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. This, yeah, the next entrance. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's there's a lot of freedom in this. This is a very free moment for you. But that being said, it still has a very, very clear structure to it. And I think your arc could have a little bit larger of a shape, from quiet to loud and to quiet again. I mean, for me, it could come up quite a bit more and could stay up a little bit longer before it dissipates again. So like the... So it actually kind of keeps going until that C. That chromatic that there just could be a little juicier somehow. Just keep it a little more alive throughout that, I think. You want to try that again? Yeah, I think another way that you could keep it going, this is another, actually a general thing I was gonna talk to you about throughout, but the vibrato is so very important in this, well, in everything, but especially in this. And I think in this line, you can use the vibrato to connect more to the phrase and in between the notes. You know, so that as your idea of the intensity of the phrase increases, the intensity of the vibrato can go along with that.
Okay.
Can you try it again? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's better. So yeah, let's keep going. Let's hear the first phrase. Okay, so yeah, this first statement of this melody, which is actually sort of a continuation that the orchestra introduces. I think the violas start. Again, just something to think more about. Just, I mean, this melody happens over and over again, this movement, and there's different iterations of it. And so you don't want to do it the same way every time. But as far as the vibrato, again, connecting. I'm not saying every single note needs the same amount of vibrato just as a mechanism, but it just makes a big difference for the listener. Obviously, all four of us here on the panel today are opera musicians, so we listen to singers all the time. And the good ones are really exceptional at supporting a melody, a phrase, and you feel that they're supporting it from the core of their body, and the vibrato is able to connect seamlessly through the phrase if they want it to. There's not a sense of a technical reason not for it to be there. So a lot of times in this figuration, it's a 9/8, so it's a long, short, long situation. Very frequently, the short note doesn't get vibrato. So it often, which kind of, I'm exaggerating, but it kind of interrupts the scope of the phrase a little bit. So yeah, maybe you could try it again. Try to even just that first one, that you're noticing that it still has some life in the left hand.
Okay.
You try it. Yeah, the only other thing I would say to be careful of in terms of the phrasing is, because it's 9/8, a 3/4, a 3-meter bar, and it's divided 2 beats and then 1 beat. The third beat often gets a little accent because we're trying to catch up with the bow. So just be careful. when the phrase diminishes, that you don't accent the third beat, and especially the last eighth note of the third beat. So in particular, I find that you can have a variety of approaches to each turn of the phrase. I was just getting a little bit of a sense that each third beat was kind of going into the next downbeat in a sort of predictable way.
Okay.
So despite the bowing, just pay attention to which direction you want the phrase to go.
Okay.
Dynamically. One more time. Yeah. So, anything however you want to approach this is, I think, your choice and your interpretive choice. But the end of this phrase, that C sharp, that's kind of like the variable in the phrase each time it comes back. So the inflection of whether it's a C natural or a C sharp, and what it means for this version of the tune is important. So I think each time it needs a bit of a special, just attention, a choice, whatever your interpretive choice is, just something to show that that's a turn of the phrase that has a differential every time. Okay, one more time for this phrase, and then we'll keep going.
Okay.
Okay, good. I am getting a reminder that we have a clock, so I think we have to wrap it up. Do you have any quick specific questions you wanted to ask me about this movement, like before we stop?
I don't think I had anything specific.
Okay, all right. Well, then we'll just we'll pass it along to the next person. But wonderful job, great playing. And it was really nice to hear you, and really nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And now, Kari Doctor of the MET Orchestra will coach Jae-young Chong of Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, who will play Allemande from J.S. Bach Partita in D minor, arranged for cello.
Hey, Jaeyoung.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So you want to just plunge in, and then we'll talk about it when you're done.
Absolutely. Any particular thing for a repeat or no repeat?
It's not long enough. I mean, you should just do what you feel comfortable doing.
I'll do the repeats then.
Thank you. And, I wanted to start out just by saying thank you for playing this piece. Um, of course, I took it out, and luckily my husband's a violinist, so I have the music. And I started playing it, and he came in, he's like, play your own music. But I think in this case, though, it's really, it's fascinating to play it on cello. It sits very well. It's a very different feeling from the cello suites. I don't know if you feel that too.
Big time. Oh, big time. I mean, already the fact that this is the first part of the partita is already a huge difference to already stuff to think about from there. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no prelude, right? It's like you don't get the chance to kind of settle into the key like we do in the cello suites. And I think this one in particular, there's that thing looming in the back of your head, like there's the Chaconne looking over me,
Right. Yeah.
But I wanted to share, just before we start, I took out, my husband's old Galamian part.
Oh.
And there's actually, this is this thing with the facsimile in it, right? But there's an incredible quote by Carl Geiringer, who was a Bach scholar. And in fact, just a little personal tidbit, he was my father's advisor when my father was in school in the 1950s in California.
Hey.
So, but just listen to this. I think you'll really enjoy it, and I hope everyone else enjoys it too. It's so perfect what he says.
Okay.
He says, Bach, a born fighter who exulted in overcoming apparently unsurmountable difficulties, succeeded in doing the nearly impossible, to write 4-part fugues and polyphonic variations for an instrument whose very nature seems to exclude such devices. The sonatas and partitas are typical not only of Bach's personality, but of the artistic concepts of the Baroque era. At that time, the walls of houses were occasionally decorated with paintings simulating vistas of wide colonnades and formal gardens. Such embellishments require the working of the inner eye, just as the implied polyphony and rich harmonic texture in Bach's compositions require the cooperations of the inner ear. Okay, so here we have such a beautiful, eloquently written, take on how Bach managed to write these 4-part harmonies with, for basically a monotonic instrument, right? We can play a few chords here and there, but we can't do all that stuff. So that kind of brings me to, I think, what I think you absolutely understand completely, and I love hearing you play. You play beautifully. Are you, did I do my homework right? Are you a student of Desmond?
Yes, that's right. Wow. I had no idea. Yes, that's right.
University as well. And so my first introduction to these partitas and sonatas was Sergio Luca, the late Sergio Luca, who was the first violinist to record these on Baroque violin. So, and he was teaching at Rice at that time.
Right, gotcha.
And I think, obviously everyone has their own interpretation of Bach, right? And I think there's another part of me that says, you know what, with Bach you should be able to do whatever you want. It's so personal, so I applaud your playing. It's beautiful. I think you can take a little bit more time to explore. So thinking about what Geiringer said about like the different textures and the different, looking at it from the inner ear. So you want to, like Joel was saying, or maybe it was Jerry, just, presenting to the audience this, this beautiful piece, right? But internally, you have to give them a little bit more because they're hearing it for the first time, right? So. So, I think you're absolutely doing, everything that I was just doing and probably better. But what I guess I mean to say is just, I think play the beginning again and just try and think about the harmonies, where you're going. Don't speed through stuff, and not more, but just hold back and just give me, like, pretend like I'm just not very smart and I need to be told exactly, oh, this is a harmonic change, oh, this is changing key right here.
Okay, I'll try that.
In the beginning again.
Something like that.
Yeah, I love it. And I wanted to share also another thing that I took some master classes with William Pleath of many years ago, and I'll never forget, someone was playing Bach for him, and he said the most exquisite thing. He said, "Play like an idiot, darling, and the form is perfect." And it was so classic because, really, if you don't do anything, this music plays itself, right? And I think that's the key, is that you let your internal feeling and intuition kind of guide what you're doing, right?
interesting because it feels like with, bringing in the violin partitas, there is this responsibility for me to serve something for the violinist in a lot of ways. But it's relieving to hear that I can maybe loosen up a little more, actually.
No, absolutely. And and again, I mean, if you're listening to yourself, taping yourself or whatever, and you hear, okay, that's a little too much time, maybe I can, but really, I think, I would say that, gosh, this is, you can play this the way you want. I mean, sure, we owe things to the violinist because this is their piece and we have to, bow down to that. But I think, make it a different piece. It's, make it for the cello, right? And I think it fits very well into the cello, as an instrument. Another thing that I just kind of wanted to discuss is the idea of an allemande. What is your feeling about an allemande? I mean, what can you describe what you think should happen?
Funny that you mention it because the allemande being it right after prelude and our cello cases, allemande being sort of the brisk, I think more of a brisk walk kind of thing. I know we compared a lot to dance and all that too, but
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was gonna also say. I think it's a walking tempo, right? It's not necessarily a dance the way you think of a courant or a gigue or even a sarabande, right? This is in 4/4. It's even, I mean, especially this one, but most allemandes to me are very contemplative. And they have, especially in the second part, there's always a part, like the first suite is. That part is kind of, it's just, it hits you. And I think here, for me, this part is, no, I guess it's this part. It's just, it gives you the chance to really just love playing, right? One other little thing I think we have time for, I wanted to talk about the rhythms in terms of how Bach uses these, instead of just playing, I mean, like in the first cello suite, how many times do you hear something besides a 16th note? Right? It's pretty much all 16th notes. In this piece, you have these little da 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 da, and what does that do to the music? What's your feeling?
It drives forward, but it's interesting to put it that way because I find a lot of musicians play this very light, the pa da 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 da. I was trying to think of it more as a driving motion forward to. I think it's building up tension in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think, if you played it without the 30 seconds, you would have just kind of this constant motion. This gives this stops it a little bit. I think just like the triplets do, right? Da 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 da. But again, as you said, I think it makes it go forward in a way that you wouldn't if it were just 16ths, right? So always keeping that in your head, like, okay, so let's see, where are we? I can't play this. Why don't you play it for me?
Is that in the beginning?
So try once, just as a experiment. Try playing them a little bit more yada da 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 da, so that you're getting, instead of da 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 da, right?
Something like that.
So, know, I mean, it's interesting to play with, right? Because, you know, in fact, the bowing is such that, you know, she, at least Anna Magdalena, did write in 3, not a whole 6, right? So things like that that you could kind of play around with, and it's just, you know, it's just fun. Have you played any of the other movements? Are you doing the other movements?
I'm gonna move on to this. Is prepared. This is specifically for a live stream concert I'm doing soon, but I am eventually wanting to do the whole partita. So Chacon is in my list soon.
Well, I applaud you for your efforts, and I look forward to hearing it. I'm just wondering. I mean, I guess, yeah. I think we're closing in on time. Any specific questions?
Just wondering if you're happy with the ornaments that I added in the second time, and it made sense harmonically.
I think that's lovely. They're not overdone. It's, you know, it's a good suggestion of harmonic changes, you know, and I mean, it's obviously a personal thing too, but I'm definitely all for that. It sounds great.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And now Julia Bruskin of the MET Orchestra will coach Krista Hippolyte of Washington, D.C., who will play the first movement of the Lalo Cello Concerto.
Hi, so I think I'm gonna play until where the intro comes back.
Yes, that sounds great. Sounds terrific. Thank you. And bravo to everyone playing today. The level is really, really high, and just really exciting to hear all of you play this great music. I think this is, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. This is such a hard time to be a musician because we're sort of trapped in front of a screen so much of the time, and also to be a music listener. And I think it challenges us. It gives us some opportunities, but I think it also challenges us to imagine, not only what it would be like to play, not right in front of something, but in a larger space. A concerto like Lalo, or any concerto, but Lalo is particularly heroic by its nature. And I think, to think about yourself playing with an orchestra in a hall, to think about the space involved and the kind of playing that heroic character requires, is somehow inherently different than playing in front of a screen. So, but it requires imagination. But I know that you can do it because you're doing so many things so well. But just, I think, if you can kind of give up the feeling of being controlled by this box here, and thinking about, opening up the way you approach the instrument, your body, not just being stuck here, but thinking of like opening up from your collarbone, from your shoulder blades in a way that would imagine a hall, and playing out, and that when the orchestra kind of finishes their initial send-off, that you really play out into a larger space. Can you just try the opening with that idea in mind for me? Just thinking to kind of open up your body, I would say mostly in that way, and see if that changes anything for you. Don't look at the screen, forget about us, and just think in a hall.
Okay.
Miss them? I miss them. Already I have a different energy from you, which I love. I'm wondering if you can use your whole arm, really throw. It feels to me like you're using your hand a little bit, that you could use from your whole shoulder like a sandbag kind of into the cello, and that this is kind of a funny thing, but for this time perhaps, can you think of your left hand being in the lead? That's what determines when the sound starts, not your right hand. Because I think occasionally you get there before your left hand is really ready. That your left hand is kind of conducting your right hand, if it were. Does that make sense? So throw your whole arm in, but this hand's in charge. More intense now. Yeah, great. Yeah, and I have just one more idea about this. I can't see your feet, and I don't really need to, but if you were to think of actually using your feet to direct the motion of what's going, like to send you in a direction a little bit, almost like pushing off from that foot, would that change your feeling of the instrument, that you had kind of a trajectory to it? Just try the third one now, which is in some ways the most, it takes you the furthest, so use a little send-off. I like that. I like the feeling of a send-off. The sound should change completely, and I think just from my sense of you as a cellist in like the few minutes I've heard you, I think you could just kind of sit back. There's so many notes sometimes in Lalo, and you can get a little lost in the notes, da 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 da. But I think when you get to this. Feel like you're kind of floating through space, that the notes themselves don't matter so much, but you're kind of drifting. Can you just try right from that tempo where you kind of daydream a little bit more? your shoulder is holding you in. If you could just let this be a little like you're swimming or so in water. Just imagine your body in water and how that would feel, and let it kind of be swimmier. One more time, that. Feet now. Yeah, so here again, you're going to kind of feel yourself rooted in the ground and use that. I think that same feeling of sitting back and you know, kind of opening up your joints in the second theme, you know, when you get to... It's still rhythmic, but I think this feeling of kind of overflowing sound that just keeps ringing through, it's the same kind of feeling of what I was just saying. Let me see. I wanted to mention just one last thing about the opening, which I think it's another place we need to use our imaginations even more than usual, because it's very hard. I don't know if you've had the chance to play this with piano recently, or orchestra, probably not, but I think that kind of forces us to use our imaginations even more to imagine that orchestral part. And at the beginning, in the lento section we've been working on, but also right at the start of the Allegro Maestoso, I'll ask you to play that now, the orchestra basically kind of like intrudes with these fourth beat slashes. I don't know if you remember this as like bum ba da 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 dum bum. They kind of like cut you off very rudely for like the first few phrases of the piece. And I think if you kind of feel that inside, even though you can't hear it, but I think if you can, you know, draw it up in your mind and feel that as it kind of, I think it changes the energy of the way that phrase goes together. It's not like finished. It's a it sort of changes the ending of that note and how it goes into the next thing. So do you want to just try that beginning of the Allegro Maestoso, imagining those, you know, it's sort of like it sort of injects energy in a way that I think is really helpful as a performer to have. You're missing it, but you can give it to yourself, I think. Great. Yeah, no, I think that helps already. And throughout this, I think, you know, if it helps to listen to it, or, you know, to look at the score a bit, to just because I think it's something we're all missing right now, is the interaction of playing, the kind of responding off of someone else's energy. And I think the more that you can kind of take it on even through yourself, I think that's always good for us to do, but now sort of more than ever. I wanted to look at just one other spot, because I know we don't have so much time, but it's kind of, actually I would have to say maybe my favorite theme of this movement. Let me find it. That's the one where we kind of feel Lalo's Spanish flair. I felt like the rhythm in this piece is really tricky, and you were handling it generally really, really well, but here I felt like the 16th notes within the triplet went a little too fast. Like I kind of bum ba da. I almost didn't hear them. Bum 1 2 3 da 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 dum bum ba da da. If you kind of thing. There, it's a little more dug into the string maybe with the bow, and a little more pronounced, like as if the word had ta ta ta. You know, a little more castanet action in there. That would be great. Yeah, I think if you really catch the string before you start the second note, dum ba da da, it feels a little slippy right there. Yep. Yeah, even. Yeah. Yeah. by a little too fast. Don't let them be so fast we don't understand them. But also, even those notes, I would catch the string really from the string so that there's a kind of a pop to them. It gives it just a little bit more profile and kind of like energy that's held in but wanting to break out in that theme. Can you do just one more time? Just feel kind of inside, like there was a snare drum kind of accompanying you, and it wouldn't let you go any faster than it wanted to go. Good. Yeah. My last thought for you, when you play a trill in this piece, and also when you get into some of these passages of long sextuplets, which this piece has a few too many of, see if you can really keep them singing the same as you would, you know, something that was more of a melody. Something like, somehow in the trill it feels a little bit like you just kind of go into trilling and you're not really playing a melodic note as much. It's still got kind of a trill is in some ways like the most volatile, kind like even more so than like intense vibrato. It's sort of like da 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 da, like a argument between two notes, and it sort of wants to go somewhere. And when it breaks out, it's kind of like an explosion. So I think if you can think really melodic in that, but also like right at the end of what you played for me, like it's like you can't, you know, not every note is as important, but I think that the harmonic underpinning is still really a story that you can tell. I had a little bit of a sense of, okay, here I go, passage, I'm going to get to the end, and you played it brilliantly, but see if you can just try that a little bit to feel the progression of what's going on harmonically that's building up to this great finish. And I think maybe like to think of certain notes as like part of that melodic story and let the rest go. Do you want to do maybe from, go a couple bars before that if you can, maybe, or wherever you like, a couple bars before those sextuplets start. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna stop you one more time. Again, I feel like your bow is too much in charge and it's getting a little ahead of you. Something like your left hand should be really intense, really in the string, and really in control. Your bow should not be allowed, like it's sort of like a child you're keeping really on a tight leash. That it sort of can't rush you, I think, because you know that's sort of where you're going to be. Just try from there. From there. Good, yeah, and more bow as you get to the top. Really into the string so that you really go for it at the end of that. But that's great. You want to try one more time that last bit? Just the last bar of it or something. Remember, your left hand's in charge. Don't let your bow hurry you. Great, bravo. Yeah, terrific. I'd like to hear you play the whole piece with an orchestra one day. I hope that's possible.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really gorgeous performances by everyone today. We can take a couple minutes now for questions. If anyone has questions, please enter them in the chat or the Q&A widget on Zoom. While you come up with the questions, I'll mention again that we are currently accepting applications for performers for upcoming masterclasses for flute, double bass, oboe, horn, and trombone. And the flute applications are due at midnight tonight. While we're waiting to see if there are any questions that would come in, I would love to hear more about Jae Young's microphone setup, unless somebody else has another question. It's so impressive, and the audio sounded amazing.
Oh, thank you. I hope you don't mind me chiming in.
No, I'd love to.
So, well, I've been working with this room and I guess quote unquote bedroom studio for a whole year now, and you know, being out of school and having a job does help it make this work. That being said, they're actually, in terms of what you can do at home, it's really not bad. This is a Samson CO2 microphone right here. So basically, they're pencil microphones that actually narrows in kind of into your sound. So I would recommend a small diaphragm pencil mic if you're at home and you're trying to get your sound, and also get a audio interface. Also, what I recommend. I just got this a couple. I just got this. It's about $600, but you can get all the cheaper versions with this too, and that also ups the high sound quality as well. And
That's amazing. Yeah, it sounded great. I mean, everybody sounded wonderful. But yeah, the audio quality of your setup is noticeable. Okay, here's a question from Krista. Do you have any advice for general practice and memorizing when learning several large works for a concert?
I can jump in for a minute about the memorizing one with a piece of advice that my teacher Tim Eddy used to give people about memorization, and he would say that a lot of memorization for him was away from the cello. That you know, you do all your practice to learn it, but that for him, if he could kind of in his head go through a piece without the instrument, which is much harder because you don't have all the physical kind of cues of what you're doing. That if you can kind of imagine it and go through, you know, really like as if you were playing it, all the mental things that you would be thinking and doing, and you know, the kind of mental reminders. If you can do that without the cello, that when you get to the cello, it's, you know, with all those cues there, it's much easier. So that's one piece of advice. It's everyone kind of learns differently, and I think for me that was always a really difficult thing because I think a lot of my memory was physical, but I did find that when I could do that, then when I got back to the instrument, it was easier. And general practice, that's a big topic. We could have a whole class on that probably. I mean, I think, again, it's something that's maybe a little bit different in these times than it was even before, because I think, you know, our time is, you know, it feels like everything is different. But I think I would encourage you, even if you're not getting out to studio class or performing for a teacher in like a lesson, to still within your practice have like levels of work where sometimes you're really digging deep into, you know, a certain passage or intonation or rhythm, or, you know, really working at your bow on something. Other times where you kind of come out and decide to play through a whole section, you know, I'm going to play from here to here no matter what happens. Other times when you perform it for whoever's around, even if it's over Zoom, to kind of, you know, give yourself the feeling of trying something out for real, that you're not kind of so buried into the weeds of what you're doing that you kind of lose that public face, which is
if I could
what we're all missing.
Say a word about practicing. You're right, it's a big subject and you can spend all day talking about how to do it right, if there is such a thing as doing it right. But the simplest way I find to think of it, and the most the way that I accomplish the most when I'm practicing is two things: slow down, really slow down, and pay attention. Really pay attention to everything you're doing, everything you're hearing, and only then you can be your your own best teacher, because you are your own best teacher when you're paying attention. Otherwise, if you wait for someone to tell you how to do it, you probably already have bad habits that need to be undone. But if you pay attention, and especially, I encourage everyone to pursue or explore Alexander technique, which is something that helped me more than anything else in terms of being aware of my body when I play the cello. Nothing has helped me more than that. It's just wonderful stuff. And again, it's about paying attention and being aware. And it's very, very helpful to incorporate those ideas. That's all.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions. One from Daniel. How has being an opera musician changed your approach to cello playing?
Yeah, I see there's someone else has a similar question, and the thing that I always get to when this question is asked is how much singers have influenced, I think, every single one of us. I mean, it's just remarkable to hear, all of us in the orchestra are, we're all our own people, we're all our own musicians, we play very differently, but yet we come together, and the consistent thing is the voice, the song, the quality from within. And I think one of the biggest compliments I've ever received was from another cellist colleague of mine. I'd been working at the Met for about a year, and he and I had gotten together to play something for two cellos, and he said, "Kari, I hear singers in your playing." And I think that's the biggest thing. It's just that you hear the human voice, and also just, the stretch and the follow through. I think Joel was talking about this, just the way that they create lines and do things within the line. That would be I
could add to it, if I may, a little bit what I was saying to Sue Min about intensity and going over the top emotionally. We hear that on a daily basis when the Met's actually going on. It's unbelievable how much these singers pour into their performances, the intensity and the emotion. It's almost never, you can't imagine how much is being put out there by these great voices and great singers. And, when you try to emulate that, it's always a little frustrating because we can't even come close to what they put out in terms of volume and quality of sound, some of these most incredibly beautiful voices. But the intensity is very much something that I emulate. I mean, of course, not every piece of music is that, instrumental music doesn't always go there. But the stuff that does, like the Schumann Cello Concerto, you think of Pavarotti or any of hundreds of the great singers that we've heard over the years. They really put everything they've got into it, and it is thrilling. It is unbelievable. So we try. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing to that as well. It is all of those things, what we hear from the singers all the time, but actually the repertoire itself is so fundamental to how we approach everything we do. And amazingly, opera rep is sort of underrepresented in our cellistic education. And when you play a bunch of seasons in an opera company and you go back and shred through some Popper etudes, you hear chord progressions that are from Die Valkyrie or something, or or having played Marriage of Figaro 25 times, suddenly going and playing a Mozart viola quintet feels very different as well. So I would say I've always felt the benefit of the repertoire informing the rest of my musical understanding, I guess.
I couldn't agree more with what all three of you just said, and I think just one more piece that I would add to it, because I think being in an opera orchestra does shape who we are very, very much. It's just whenever I'm playing in a piece of music or teaching or hearing someone, I'm always thinking about the characterization of what character this music is, what emotions it's showing things like that. I think there's nothing that shows that more clearly than opera and the repertoire there. And, to see a great singer bring to life a character, like in a Mozart opera, it's so explicit, the characterization, because it's a person in a story with a backstory and all these things. And I think if we take that level of degree of detail and character development and bring it to music that doesn't have that kind of explicit storyline to it, I think it can really help bring all music to life. I think all music has that kind of inside of it, but it's just not laid out as explicitly with a libretto and all these things. So I think that's something that I've thought a lot more about after playing at an opera house.
Those are wonderful insights. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, we are about out of time, so I'll just wrap things up here. I hope you will join us for our next masterclasses, which are bi-weekly on Sunday afternoons. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Stay well and see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks. Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
We miss each
It was a
other.
great class.